Brooklyn boy.
Hey, you kill this one, Scott?
What's up? I'm Scott Taylor. I'm an illustrator and a music producer. And yeah, I guess I'm going to tell my part of my story. I was born in 1996. My dad was in the military at the time, so we were never really staying in one place. I was born in Illinois. I think we bounced around like every couple years. One of the first places I remember living was on a military base in Ramstein, Germany. I don't remember really staying anywhere for like more than 2 years. So my childhood is pretty much just a bunch of memories of like going somewhere, setting up temporary shop, and then leaving to go somewhere else. It was pretty cool being able to like live in Europe and see a lot of the things that other people didn't see, but it's also like I never really got to have that grounding that a lot of people talk about sometimes. Or you like watch movies or hear people talk about like friends for life, like people they've known since they were a kid who they're still like close with. And it's like, that's something I never really got to experience. Being able to travel the world a little bit has helped inform my art to like really want me to like explore more creative side of like what the world has to offer. Honestly, no, because around when I was in seventh grade, we moved from Belgium back to the United States, and I've been in the States since then. Like I went to high school and graduated in college in the States. I haven't been back to Europe or anywhere since then. So I guess not really, but at the same time, I don't even feel like a strong connection to the United States. Growing up, it was just wherever my family was, not necessarily any specific place. It's really just wherever I'm working. When you're packing up and making new friends year after year after year, you gotta have to be good with one, being the person. When you're a new kid, especially in a small school, everybody like calls you new kid, or they like, know you as the person who isn't. You kind of have to get used to like adapting to different people and fitting in different like social circles. So I think it really helped with that, because once I moved after my freshman year, I was just burnt out because I'd made all these friends or whatever, and I thought that I was going to stay and graduate in Ohio, but then we moved again. So by that time I was just burnt out. So I didn't really like try to be a huge social butterfly. I kind of just hung out with a few people, and honestly in high school just wasted time. I think it definitely helped, especially when I got to college and tried to be more social, but at the same time I was burnt out from it. It's not like I was like a total shut-in, because I definitely had a group of friends and a girlfriend in high school, but it's not, I didn't want to like be that guy. Like, I don't know, it's just a lot more low-key than I was prior to that. It's complicated because I had a good relationship with schools growing up as a kid. Maybe they just weren't too challenging, but I was able to just goof around and get good grades, not have to really think too much about academics. Growing up and mostly on different military bases and stuff, so closely connected to like the United States military, they're making sure that there's resources. So like I was never at any schools, like all the schools I went to had like good art and music programs, like a lot of things to like really foster creativity that like compared to schools in the United States where they really cut that out. I think I was in a unique situation to be able to have that kind of like ability nurtured. As I was growing up, I was always drawing Dragon Ball Z. I had 2 Dragon Ball like VHS tapes, but I never watched the shows. I knew the story solely through playing the games. So I was like obsessed as a kid drawing the characters. So I just have like stacks and stacks of paper, and I'd just be drawing terrible looking renditions of Dragon Ball Z stuff for years. My parents supported that, like teachers who saw it supported my art, and like I was able to be in like art and music classes. So I think in that way I was really fortunate. But then once I got to high school and around the time I got diagnosed with ADHD, I never really had a great study ethic just because I was able to coast by through elementary school. But then once it got to like 7th and 8th grade, because they put me in more advanced classes than I was probably prepared for, so I started drowning, and that's when I started getting D's and F's. It started a whole different relationship with school where I was just constantly trying to keep my head above water while wanting to just draw and do creative things. It's around that time when I moved to the States where that changed. I went to a state university when I graduated high school. I wouldn't admit it to myself back then, but like my best friend was going there. I knew other people there. It was an easier school. Just all these things lined up, and it was like a party school. So that's where I went for a year and a half before like I completely burned out of there. I have a different view on like state schools and stuff, like specifically the art program versus where I ended up going to private art colleges. One of them was called DCAD, Delaware College of Art and Design in Wilmington, Delaware, where I went for 2 years. And then from there, I got a scholarship and transferred to MICA, but it's another art school in Baltimore. I was, again, in a fortunate enough position to be able to go to these places and like study. And I learned a lot, but at the same time, I'm not someone who thinks that you need school. Like if you can afford to go to school and it won't end your life with all that debt, the amount of debt you have to take on for education in America is just utterly soul crushing. A lot of people actually DM me and ask me about stuff like this. So I I was able to learn a lot just because, again, I was in a position to be able to take advantage of all these things. I would not recommend going into over $20,000 in debt to go to art school. One, you need the drive. And if you don't have the drive, then you're going to waste the money. But if you do have the drive, there's enough online resources now, especially stuff like Skillshare and Domestika, things like that, which are like industry professionals teaching you about what you need. I am saving up for a course that the guy who created the world for Adventure Time, his name is Ghost Shrimp, and he's like the person who did all the earliest work. If you look through his stuff, you'll see that's kind of like how Adventure Time really like built its world out. And he offers a course. It's like 13-week virtual course for like $1,000 something, where he like gives you like one-on-one feedback every week. You have like different discussions with the class. So like I think instruction from people who know what they're talking about is super helpful if you're willing to follow through. But I don't believe that school is for everyone, especially if you're not like a math and science person. I can't really say too much about the other countries, but if you have that kind of brain, then I definitely think taking school seriously is a good thing. It just sucks that like there's a lot of like super talented and like creative people who get their worth just kicked out of them from not fitting into that specific guideline. When everything was failing with math and science, my parents especially were starting to worry because like my older brother is straight A's. So me starting to fail, they're like, yo, what the hell? Like, so that's when I started taking my first Photoshop class in 8th grade, which was sick, and I loved it. And then I got into like photo and video editing. So I thought I wanted to be a graphic designer just because I didn't know about the world of illustration really. But it really came from a place like I suck at so many things. Like I can't be an accountant. I can't be a scientist. Like what am I good at? And I need to like really hone in on that because all the math and science problems just continued throughout high school. That same time around 8th grade, dubstep was popping off. Around the same time Modern Warfare 2 came out. That might place a good reference for some people listening. I hated dubstep at the time just because I'd never heard it. I listened to mostly like metal at that point. So when I heard it, it was just annoying and I didn't get it. And that's how it is with most people who hear things they don't get or understand at first. It's like stupid. So then I was like, I bet I can make that. So then I bet my friend that I can make a song. And so I made this really crappy song. I forgot even what DAW it was on. In my like small circle of friends, everybody thought it was hilarious. So I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I kept like messing around with it a little bit. Nike's on My Feet by Mac Miller, Wildfire by Little Dragon, I think featuring Sampha. Those two songs made me want to start producing music. I never really took it too seriously. I knew how to play the piano a little bit and I'd been drumming for a while. At that point, music was just something that I would like retreat to by myself and just not do much with it. I didn't even start taking that seriously until quarantine. So 2020, I was making songs on GarageBand and I got Big Baby Gucci on one of them, who was a pretty big get for me at the time. There are a lot of producers like Reggie and Gios who helped me out in the beginning. Nate Number 8 invited me to the Perkaholics. I heard all the beats in that Discord and they were going insane. It felt weird to be the worst producer in a group of producers. So that really inspired me to like really go hard because again, it's only something I've been like loosely doing and having fun with throughout high school the past like 8 years or so. So I'd say art has always been a little bit more prevalent in like what I'm confident about. The first art that I was doing was just doodles. I wasn't like really drawing from life or anything, just like drawing nonsense in my head. So I'd like draw turtles or like little faces. I draw a mouse. I draw hot dog people, banana people, just stupid little things that I draw all over my notes. I'd always gotten a little bit of attention from people because I was always drawing, but I never thought of it like anything that cool. So in high school is when I found this artist named John Ken Mortensen. He's like this old Danish dude who draws these like creepy things on post-it notes for his daughters. And they were like really creepy, detailed line work, really cool. I got really inspired by that and I started emulating kind of his work in my own style. I was probably leaning a little bit too close to the copy line, but I mean, I was a kid. I was like 13, just trying to figure it out. And then my friend introduced me to Adventure Time because I had heard about Adventure Time, but I was also like a hater when I was a kid. Like I didn't need to be that much of a dick. Either way, I wrote off Adventure Time as just stupid kid stuff because this might be embarrassing for me, but I'd always be in the Hot Topic looking for band t-shirts because I was really into like the metalcore. So they had like insane, like my favorite ones was the Devil Wears Prada t-shirt, but I'd always see like Adventure Time stuff and I'd be like, it's just a cartoon that's like stupid, just close-minded as shit. I don't even know why. But then my friend, he was an artist too, and his art was way better than mine, cool as hell. And so he mentioned Adventure Time. I was like, no, I don't watch Adventure Time. It's stupid. And he was like, have you seen your art? Like, why don't you like watch Adventure Time? So then he showed me the episode with Prismo and Jake in like a hot tub and like a very like interdimensional, like crazy, just a way bigger plot line than I was expecting for that show, which really showed me that like I was an idiot. And the show was actually like taking like really big story arcs and like really big ideas, which I was super drawn to at the time. I'd stopped being a hater a little bit going more into high school, but that's one of the things that broke down those barriers. Like, wow, this is insane. So then I got really into Adventure Time. And at the same time, there's another artist who I went to school with who's an underground legend, and his name is Young Leaf. But he was one of my good friends, and we'd always be in French class, not paying attention and talking, and the teacher would get pissed at us. One time, the teacher actually came by and took my piece of paper and crumpled it and threw it out as I was drawing it. It wasn't anything crazy that I was drawing because at the time I was still really trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I was in a graphic design class, so I was getting really good with Photoshop at the time. In high school, I thought drawing was fun, but like I'm really gonna make it as like a graphic designer. But then my work started getting more illustrative. By the time I applied to colleges, actual like art schools, they looked at my portfolio, they're like, yeah, you're not a graphic designer, you're an illustrator. That dude, Young Leaf, who was a huge influence on my style at that time. And that's one of the big things that made me push like drawing more cartoon stuff because his work was pretty unpolished at the time. It also felt very natural and it was fun to watch, which helped me kind of break out of the idea that like I only did like little nonsense doodles or just small little things because like I felt like I wasn't good enough to really try anything more like serious or actually like draw people. It was a big call for me to like really just try to like embrace the more like creative parts of my art artwork and not worry about how like professional or clean anything looks. So I would definitely recommend following that guy. Is there a such thing as bad art, or is there art that you personally just don't like? I'm more on the side of it that says there absolutely 100% is bad art, and there's a lot of bad art, but that's okay. Like the idea that any creative self-expression needs to be very polished and like a beautiful thing, like that's just wrong. Like I love singing like in the shower or whatever, sing along songs, but I'm a terrible singer. But it's not like I should just never sing because I'm terrible at it. Like it's like a self-expression. So a big part of it though comes down to like putting the work in, because looking at someone's art, you can tell pretty quickly how many hours they have in the lab, especially with digital art, especially stuff like Procreate. There's a lot of shortcuts that are relatively easy to see. My first reaction is I'm glad that someone's like creating and like doing this, because like I think it's a great thing to do. But at the same time, when people start like trying to sell it, or when they get like really personal about like the feedback, because that's one of the hardest things about art school. You're having to deal with teachers tell you something just straight up isn't working. Some will be more mean than others, some not mean enough in my opinion. And then you have your fellow classmates who a lot of them are way better than you, telling you valid things that hurt your feelings, and it sucks to hear. Spend all this time trying to get it right, and then some dude who you know makes crazy art tells you things that immediately make sense. There's a lot of having to like balance your ego with it. And I think a lot of people that hit that first brick wall when someone tells them their stuff's not good enough, their stuff's not to standard. But I think a lot of it's just like the work you're willing to put into it and like your own creative vision. Because in all of my art classes, I was like in the lower third of technical ability. So I wouldn't be like the worst drawer in the class, but I'd be like third or fourth from the worst. At a class of like 15 people or so, like I was never one of the top people for like technical drawing, being able to like capture what you see. And it's something I'm still working on a ton. I was not in the top of my classes at art school. I was good at what I knew because I'd spent so much time just with a pencil in my hand, like countless, like hundreds of thousands of hours, just my whole life, just with something in my hand drawing. So that's why a lot of people point out to like my line work in specific. Like people can tell a lot of the times just from the lines, the way they're drawn, that it's me. And that's not something that I'm trying to do at any point. It just happens like that. But it's not something you force. That's hundreds of thousands of hours with a pencil in my hand. If I would have quit after every like bad critique, then I would have quit so long ago. But at the same time, if I would have taken every positive one and made my entire perception of my art around that, then I would have like the biggest ego ever. So I think it's really like leveling all the good critiques and bad critiques, especially with the rise of social media, because there's a lot of people who I was friends with who their work would kind of get like trashed by some of the teachers. but they post it online and their online audience would love it. But that doesn't mean like ignore what the teacher is saying, because like one of the benefits of these schools is that we're being taught by people who've been illustrating professionally for years. So they know the industry. Obviously, they're wrong a lot of times too, especially if they're older and have money. They like really clouds their view of like things happening closer to the ground. But it's not a reason to like completely disregard them. So I think it just comes down to like how much you believe in your work and how much time you're willing to put in. And then it makes it easier to balance all those good and bad critiques. But someone who put the bare minimum in is expecting praise for it, they'll get shot down pretty hard and likely would not be able to make it through. I think everybody should make art if you want to make art, like absolutely. But like it's hard to make a career out of it. I am having a hard time building something sustainable. I have a social media following. People like know my art's been seen internationally, and I'm still having a hard time making this my full-time job. It's not super easy, but I guess if it was easy, then everybody would be doing it. And I guess everybody is doing it to some extent. Well, I guess one of my personal struggles is dealing with like chronic migraines and the fact that like the work people want from me is all done digitally. There's no way to do it without being in front of a screen. Sometimes I feel like the will and I want to work, but like my head just wouldn't allow it. A lot of the struggles are just really like external things caused by how easily commodified art has become, especially as an example with like AI art. I'm not going to sit here and like blame everything that's bad with the world on AI art, but like the idea, I was just on TikTok earlier today scrolling and it said, do you want to make your own cover art for free? And they went and they were like, just type in blah, 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 jar of eyeballs. And then they click cinematic lighting, good rendering, hyper detail, all these like little buttons with it saying jar of eyeballs. And then it clicked out a decent image. It's not something that I would use. The general like standard for a lot of people's like artistic taste is relatively low. So especially in the comments, everybody is gassing it up as like the greatest thing ever. It's just very easy to make, which saturates the entire thing, like the entire market. Because especially as I'm in these college classes, one of them is called business development, where it teaches you about like taxes and how to successfully being an artist, logistical side, because it's not all just drawing pictures. They're talking about rates for freelancing. A cover art is like $3,000 to $4,000. You're doing this for like one that is completely not what the reality is for anybody trying to make it. Like, yeah, if you had your work in the New York Times and then you had Rolling Stone, like had an illustration from you, and they're very transparent about this. A lot of my teachers were like, you're in college right now and it's good that you're learning, but like the market is hard. For every one job, there's thousands of people who are just as good, if not better than you, applying for that same job. No matter how good you are, no matter how good your stuff is, there's always going to be somebody better, and better in the way that like these jobs depend on people's specific eye. So if there's a company hiring, no two people are going to pick the same artist for that job, because one dude might pick someone who likes my work or something that's like just more fun and outside the box, a little weird, just a little bit crazy. And then another person might see that and be like, okay, like that's cool, but pick something a lot more like conform, or like it just all depends on like the individual person. So even the idea that like there's always someone better than you, I believe that. But with art, it's a whole different thing. It's where someone's like style will be completely different than yours. It just checks off more boxes in somebody's head than mine. What they don't mention as much, which is, I guess they think it's common knowledge, it's like connections. Let's say a company that like has shows streaming or whatever is hiring a graphic designer. It's probably going to be more like somebody is like, oh, I have a niece who's an illustrator, like somebody who works at the place. Like those jobs don't go on Monster and Indeed. Like when you're going on Monster and Indeed for design jobs, you get like more boring, like corporate graphic design stuff. So none of the fun illustration jobs, like designing something for like a Coke can or anything along that lines, like really fun things you can think about, or like even a character designer at Cartoon Network. Like that job is not going to be just posted first, it's going to go down to levels of people and like a lot of like nepotism and connections involved, especially in the American industry. Connections is everything. I might just be talking out of my ass because I'm outside of that industry, but I don't know a single person who I've graduated with who's like really broken into that side. I guess it's good that they're teaching you to really value your art. You can't hit the scene as an unknown and charge thousands of dollars. Like even with like the stature that I've built over the last couple of years, people still think that $300 is like way too expensive for what I do. So you're always going to get that. I don't know. I'm having trouble breaking into that more professional window, which is somewhere I thought I'd be closer to by now. Cause like I love working in the underground scene. I love doing music cover arts and everything like that, but I could be doing a lot more. I have the potential to be doing a lot more. And maybe part of it's my fault for just like being content in my situation and not building out more portfolios and not like seeking out those opportunities. But just in general, like even keeping the cover art flow going is it's a grind because a lot of the best cover arts, the ones that people know me from, I did not get paid for. The artist at 0 point in time was ever going to pay me. And I knew that because I hate promoting this to younger artists because it's like, don't work for exposure. I think it's such like a real thing. But like, if I didn't work for exposure, you would not see half of my iconic cover art. It sucks. I hate putting it out there, but I also feel like I owe transparency to other people who are like trying to make it, that like, you'll probably have to do a lot of free work. I've tried to change my tone on it by now because I used to be really resentful of that and really like angry at myself and the artists. It's a business at the end of the day. I can either whine about it or I can figure out how I'm going to make it happen. When you tell other artists who are pretty successful or doing well on social media that you're frustrated with growing, they'll recommend like doing like drawing trends or like recreate your favorite album covers or draw rappers, or like there's a lot of like ways that technically, yes, you can draw something and it will get seen. Like if I drew Mac Miller every single day for 100 days, you don't want to do that. So that's why in my head I rationalized, all right, if I'm doing this cover art for free, it'd kind of be like the same as me doing a random cover art and hopefully that people retweet it and bring some attention to my work. Now what I do is like more trade. So if it's like a producer I like, I'll be like, yo, trade me some loops and I'll send you some art. If it's an artist I like, I'm like, yo, like let's work. I got some beats for you. Like I'll give you some cuts. So it's a lot of like trading like that. But I had to kind of build a reputation to like make what I have to offer worth it. A lot of the cool covers, people would also just let me do whatever I wanted. So it seemed more of a situation where they liked my art and like respected me as an artist, but like their money wasn't in a situation where they could pay as much as something like that would be worth. $100 is a lot of money for a lot of people. So that's why I don't try to take it for granted when people don't have the money. I just say like, thanks for reaching out. Like I appreciate you like supporting my artwork and stuff like that. The amount of creative freedom I've been able to get from some of those free cover arts has made it worth it, to where like some of those are the most iconic ones that people know me from. And I was allowed to just do whatever I wanted. I didn't have to get nailed down by a manager and a record label guy saying, okay, change this, make this color that, or literally just like hammer the life out of it. Just a lot of people think that I'm rich and I'm like doing some like huge things, but it's like, no, that's just not the reality of it. Just because like I make a good amount of money, but like my expenses kind of like even it all out to where I'm not stacking up. I'm not flexing. I'm not, and I don't really do anything either. Like due to COVID, I just stay home and work. Like I take care of my animals and I see my friends occasionally, but it's like I'm really locked in and working. So even trying to put all my money towards like my time towards like saving and trying to build something up, it's still hard, especially trying to like get fake gold off the ground, because that's a lot of investment flows and marketing and all that stuff too. So yeah, I hope any artist that is watching this who feels like they are doing the wrong thing because they're not like wildly successful. It's like even the artists you think are wildly successful are struggling. People who I think are way better than me and have a huge following on social media, they're also struggling. Like the reality is a lot more grim than people think it is for artists, especially with AI being another tool for people. Because there's been so many times where someone's in my DMs like, hey, how much you charge for cover art? Oh, thanks for reaching out. I charge like between 200 and 600, depending on what your budget is and the idea, blah, 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 blah. They leave me on red. That's cool. That happens 20 times a day. But then they message me again and tell me to support their drop with an AI cover art that you can tell is AI. It's just another barrier for people to not have to pay artists. And especially companies, big companies are using it too to like just avoid having to pay artists, because it's just increasingly harder every year to get paid fairly as a creative, especially as tools become made for everybody to do it a little bit easier and make everybody think that they can do it. Well, especially from now to back then, I never used color prior to like mid 2019. Like I did in school when I had to, but my comfort zone was black and white. And so I'd actually draw on like tiny ass note cards most of the time with like a micron pen or ballpoint pen, really getting in with small details. Once I got the iPad Pro and I took a class in college called Imaginative Realism, which also, if there's any artists watching this, that class pretty much taught this book called Imaginative Realism. A cheap buy, I think it's like 20 something dollars, but it'll teach you what you need to know about light, shadows, and color. So that's where a lot of my foundation for that comes from. I was not good with color at all. So to see people compliment me now on my color scheme, that's pretty wild to me, just because it's a relatively new thing for me. The hole in the eyes, that is a very specific artist. His name is Victor Castillo. He is really inspired by old Disney stuff. So a lot of his work is like classic like Disney imagery, like forest and castle stuff like that, with like a dark twist. So like these kids skipping around, or like these kids like skipping away from a house they just set on fire with these hollow eyes. And it was insanely mesmerizing to me. Anybody who looks at it and knows my work will instantly see the connection. I've broadcasted this so many times that I took the eye thing from him, but it's like he also took it from somewhere else, because like art kind of like these small things get passed down. Rubber hose work, and that's like the style of animation that like Popeye and Betty Boop from like the 1930s. Those combinations, obviously with Adventure Time, and then this other specific artist named Gaston Pacheco, he is a big influence on me as well. I try to like really sum it up with that original artist I mentioned, John Ken Mortensen, because his work is really dense, and that's what got me into like that whole like hiding stuff in places. So in my cover arts, you'll always see like little monsters or some crazy stuff. His work is a lot of like really creepy stuff hiding around. So I took that and like merged it with like the more fun and like vibrantness of Adventure Time and the bubbliness of that. And then these other two artists who I just mentioned, just through the years of just drawing it out, figuring it, it kind of brought it to the style that it's at now. It helped going to art school and learning the foundation. So like actually getting in there and doing the boring classes where you got to draw a chair and draw a box and just not do anything fun, just draw as well as you can what you see in front of you. That was absolutely important to me, because my progression through art school of what it would look like when I drew a naked person, because you had to draw a bunch of naked models. First ones were horrendous, awful. I would never show anybody them. But I was relatively proud of the ones I was doing by my senior year, because I actually just like locked in, made the change to like get better. So all those artists that I mentioned, plus me putting in the time in the foundation, your ideas and creativity can be like to the moon, but it will always be limited by how well you can technically perform it, which is why like photorealistic art isn't everything. The better you understand what you're drawing, the more both levels will rise together, because it gets to a certain point. If your creativity is all the way up here, but you can't do anything, like you're not going any further. The cover art for Jay Storm's Tragedy, Tony Snow's The World Is Ours, those got such good reception when they dropped, and people loved them. And they both have the hollow yellow eyes. That's the thing I added from Victor Castillo. I always put yellow in the eyes to make them glowing instead of black and hollow. Obviously, there's no one who's gonna like go back and like check, but there is no humans in my work really prior to that. I draw robots occasionally, but I was scared of my limited talent and being able to like draw people that I never would. I just draw nonsense instead. So I got really good at like just drawing nonsense. But then once I started like really taking it more seriously, like taking a photo of a person and turning it into a cartoon is something I still struggle with heavy. That's why I'm trying to like branch out a little bit more now. And I think my progression has been good over the years, but at the same time, unless you have like a crazy hairstyle or like a face tattoo or like glasses or like something specific, a lot of my characters look almost the exact same. I guess that's the way it is, because if you took something like the SpongeBob fish, they're pretty much all the same thing with different colors and like different things. So I guess I might be being too hard on myself. Finding a style is not something you can like really consciously do, because it's like if you're looking for it and like always trying to like make my style, then it's just going to be weird and disjointed. It just has to like happen. It evolves with like what you take in, your inspiration. Because if I never found that guy's Instagram, Victor Castillo, then because I found his Instagram a month before I made The World Is Ours. So if I never found his Instagram, then I was probably never making that cover for Tony. And then that set up an entire snowball, because then Tony saw it, and then I did it for 645 AR. So it was a lot of that Atlanta scene really like fucking with me and like really bringing me up, as well as the music was going up. Yeah, there's a lot of different milestones for that, but I would say that the one that solidified me, especially within plug culture and plug music, would be when I did the art for Mexico Dro's EP Down Bad. Because I was doing all the groundwork. I was working with Tony, 10K, 645AR, a lot of Atlanta people, and like really starting to build out in the plug sound. I think I'd started working with Boof Pack Mookie at the same time. And so then once that Mexico Dro cover, it kind of just like stamped it that like my art was one of the faces of subgenre of music, and especially that area. So I'm pretty sure like the highest concentration of my fans or supporters would be in Atlanta. Honestly, that's a thing that I'm super grateful for, to be embraced by a lot of the people in that city. Like it's a beautiful thing. So Yeah, I was thinking that for a little bit, but it's like once I started actually like having people wanting to buy my work, it was kind of an addictive feeling because I was worried about graduating. I knew how hard it was going to be. There are no jobs. It's just hard. So college is the easy part. So I was worried as hell. And then people started hitting me. They're like, they wanted to buy my work. So I kind of just like got addicted to like, not like obviously like a real addiction, but like that idea that I could just be doing that. Like, it made me feel good about myself. I'd been a burnout loser since most of high school, just like smoking pot and just not caring about what happened in my future, not making any concrete moves to put myself in a better position. So that happened. And like, I got a lot of validation from doing it. I got some money. If you have money, I will draw your vision. Like, I didn't want to gatekeep it at all. I'm a little bit more gatekeepy about my beats just because I've ended up doing that to my art so hard that I don't want to lose that personal feeling I have with my music, which is why I don't have a beat store and I don't sell beats. I only send it out to artists that I like. Anytime someone had some commission, unless it was like this guy wanted me to draw like Hitler at a pool party for his weed bag. And I said, fuck no. He called me a bitch after that and blocked me, but ridiculous. So, but for the most part, like I just want to help people bring their vision to life. And like, it brings me a lot of pride to like have people invest because like I said, $100 is a lot of money. So like even 200, however much is a lot of money. And it feels like a certain responsibility that I have that I want to like make the best investment for a person possible. So it was a pretty self-fulfilling circle, which actually helped my mental health. And it's a thing that got me through quarantine because when everybody was like locked inside or whatever, I could just draw all day, not worry about anything else. And I'd be making money. Like I'd be saving, like things were going so well in 2020 and halfway through 2021 that I thought like the sky'd be the limit. I mean, part of it's just keep going every day. Even if I can only put like an hour or two in, the motivation kind of comes and goes in waves. When the motivation is high, if I don't have enough commission work, that's when I'll start being like, okay, like, do you want to cover art? Like, that's when I get a little bit more with the bargaining, just trying to like make things happen. Because like as a freelancer, you're spending a lot of time drawing and making the work, but then marketing the work, marketing yourself and getting new clients is a whole other section. So I was actually finding it relative way easier to balance out that daily sketchbook series that I did. I thought that'd be impossible. I've never stuck to anything. So that was pretty cool that I was able to like manage my career while getting that done. And then it got me thinking about wanting to pivot away from just doing cover arts to start making more content about myself as an artist. So going live more, making more tutorials, just making more videos about me and my art. I need to get to the next level. Like I appreciate everywhere gotten from now, but like just financially, I need to be able to step it up. And I've always been a SoundCloud dude. I never had Apple Music or Spotify. So SoundCloud was always where I was at. 2014, when I went to college at that party school, that's when I like really got introduced to Future and Migos, and specifically like the producers Sunny Digital and Zaytoven, Metro Boomin, Young Thug. So that really got me into trap where like I never gave it too much listen before. Like I've listened to like ASAP Rocky and Kendrick Lamar in high school. They're kind of like a little bit more commercial than Future and Migos were at the time because that was another Atlanta wave that was booming off. So I was always really drawn to Atlanta music since 2014. So that kind of stayed. And then I got a little bit more invested in like what was happening in like the Awful Records scene where it was like Father and Key specifically. I always had my ear to what was happening in Atlanta underground rap, which is how I heard of Tony Snow the first time on a song with Larry Lee. So that was the first time that someone hit me in my DMs and I recognized their name from my playlist. So I was like, oh shit, this is crazy. Honestly, it feels like a blessing to be so well received. And a lot of people have told me that it like has a lot of special places in their hearts for that part of the city that they're in. So it's not something that I like really wanted to like make sure that I was a part of, but the way it happened naturally and how I started listening to more plug music because of Tony Snow. Like I'd heard like a lot of Mexico Dro beats because he was huge. He had songs with Cardi and like Fonny and people like that. So I'd heard the sound, but then Tony Snow's stuff is what really got me like locked in on it. And I heard a Cash Cash beat for the first time and it blew my mind because like the music I was drawn to was always like really like dreamy, like ethereal stuff. So that's one of the main things that brought me in with like 2014 Atlanta trap music, and especially like a lot of Gucci Mane beats as well. Like the beats and instrumentals were just insane and just beautiful songs that like obviously I couldn't like relate to a lot of the lyrics because that's just not my life. Like the instrumental part of it really connected with me. It's just a crazy thing to be so intertwined with a genre of music that I love so much. So when people tell me that like my art is the first thing they think of when they hear plug music, it's like that's an incredible thing to hear. Like even if I don't do too much else as an artist, like just knowing I have that impact is, yeah, it's crazy. And I'm super grateful for the position I'm in. Like when Nate Number 8 invited me to join the Perkaholics, that's when everything like really kicked off. And then I dropped my first album, Surreal, in 2020, and that had like Slime Cedo, Real Young Phil, 8 really good songs that I was super proud of at the time and still am. And then I dropped the sequel to it a couple months ago, Surreal 2. Always been something that I've been doing in tandem since quarantine, really. I mean, I started taking it a lot more seriously. And I'm also lucky to be like plugged in with some of the best producers making music on the internet. Another situation where I'm just so blessed to be in that position because I can just pick up a beautiful like octo and fire main melody to like incredible producers, put some drums on it, add an 808, and like technically like make a beat out of it. It's just a level of access that has helped inform my art and my music, and it allows me to like make music that I genuinely love by working with people whose music I love too. So it's a great position to be in. It's along with the art though, I can't mix 808 a lot of the time. There's only like 3 or 4 days in a week where I can actually like mix an 808 in headphones in my car or whatever. So that holds it up. As I get stressed about drawing, I make less beats. My days pretty much go back from like working 80% of the time, then opening up FL Studio, then closing it and going back and forth. I'm also planning to drop another tape, but I want to get a couple more songs first and make a really crazy cover art. So maybe like January. I'm planning to drop a lot of music. I have a lot of really cool projects and songs with some big artists on the way. It's just crazy to be able to look back on my body of work. Just to think that I'm only getting started is what I've been telling myself. If that's what my first 2 albums were like, what's my 5th album going to be like? It's just another thing where it's like a really self-rewarding cycle where like it's a lot of hard work ended up paying off. Hard work doesn't always pay off, but hard work puts you in a better position to get lucky. So like someone who works hard 100% of the time, they'll have 10 chances to get lucky rather than someone who just works hard 10% of the time, they'll have 1 chance to get lucky. So that's the way that I kind of view a lot of that. Anybody says that there's not luck involved is just lying and has an overly big ego. You can do everything right, have the most incredible like business skills and artwork, and you'll still get overlooked and you'll still get like screwed just because that's what happens. The thing is, and it's cliche as hell, but like you got to pick yourself up and like dust yourself off and just keep moving. Because like you got that position from being talented and working hard. Even though that one failed, you're gonna get another one if you just keep doing what you were doing. So that's kind of what I've been telling myself whenever I take an L, and there's been a lot of L's in 2022. Yeah, well, like I have a print shop that I need to update. I need to be better about updating that. My brand Fake Gold is on a temporary hiatus just because moving to Nashville, moving states with a business gets tricky. I'm bringing Fake Gold back in 2023 for sure. So I'll have another drop of hoodies, shirts. I'm trying to get beanies. I want to get pajama pants in too. Skateboards would be cool. I don't know if I have that big of a market yet, but I might do like a small like 5 print of like skateboard decks. There's a lot that I want to make, but I also want to balance it with not having garment waste, because like the garment industry relies on like a lot of like waste and like cheap labor, manual labor. So like the industry itself has a lot of issues and creates just a lot of waste. So especially with how bad things are getting, especially with like climate change, I find my way of making my brand of sustainable and like high quality clothing made in the best way possible that I feel okay with like putting my name on it. That might be hypocritical because I'm also making stuff, but like at some point, like things got to slow down. So that's why I like really took a step back from Fake Gold. And I'm thinking like, if I drop something, I want it to be as considered as it can be. So the latest round of hoodies I did, I got 6 Rue Porter hoodies. It's a Portuguese brand that has a warehouse in California. They have like a really, really good quality hoodie that I like. That's one of the things about the name Fake Gold. You see so much trash scrolling social media. You'll see a clothing brand sponsored ad of just like a bunch of different words and maybe an anime girl, maybe some Arabic writing. Just a lot of like nonsense that doesn't like mean much. A lot of people when they're scrolling social media and see, they assume that it's trash. So that's with Fake Gold. For people who do take that chance on my products, when they order Fake Gold, they open it and I have a really nice wrapping paper. I have stickers. I have high quality clothing, high quality prints. So it's just to flip that expectation on its head. The brand name is Fake Gold, but you're getting some like serious quality that like that'll be with you for as long as you take care of it. The more I try to just analyze what I want my position to be in, that's when I'll like really make a return to like making and selling things. Cover art, I find it a lot more ethically easy to deal with because I'm making art digitally and you promote it digitally and you get that value out of that and it's cut and dry. It's a lot less that I feel responsible for in terms of like trying to take more personal responsibility of what's being released in the world is a definite good thing with the way shit's going. It's always such a great feeling when someone like just reaches out or sends me a DM that like, hey, I love your work. I saw you do this, or just any like positive message. That's like, I don't know, just being able to interact with people too, especially aspiring artists. Whenever there's an artist in my DM who has a specific question about like working digitally, like I just sent someone a mini tutorial on how I do shading. I just want to be able to be a resource for people that I wish I had easily accessible when I was trying to make art. So if people like what I'm doing and they want to reach out and like show love, like that on its own is an amazing thing as a creator. So I want to be able to give as much back receiving. So I think a lot of the love from people is one of the things that really helps me. It's hard to not judge everything purely based on financials. A lot of people love my art, but rent is still due. And if I don't have it, I don't have it. And I'm a failure as an artist. And that's not true, because if money was removed from the equation, there's thousands of people who love my artwork and who enjoy seeing it. So I think it helps me, all that fan reception, and I don't like the word fan as much because it implies such like a one-way sided thing, but like all that reception helps me fight off all the terrible thoughts and feelings coming from not having enough money. I'm going to be drawn till the day I die, whether I'm making money off it or not. But I just feel like since I'm in such a position, I want to be able to just work and like provide value to people as well. That's why I always release my time lapses so people can see what a cover looks like from start to finish. And I'm starting to film videos of me going in depth on each step on how I approach these things, because like I don't want to gatekeep any of the knowledge. I want to like put all the tools that I have out there to help anyone else, because like if there's anything I can do to make it any easier for other artists, that's a huge one for me. So I spend a lot of my time in my DMs communicating with other artists and upcoming people, just talking it out, because that's pretty much what the future is. So if you love your work and you think that your work is good, work hard at it. It's not going to come easy. Even the most talented people have to work hard as hell. So if you believe in yourself, try to apply as much as that as you can to like working on your art or just whatever you want to do, because it's not easy to make it as a creative, but there's a lot of times where it's felt like the most rewarding thing possible. And it's honestly given me a sense of purpose that I had really lost growing up. And just my career has been able to dig me out of some pretty deep mental holes, especially going through like the worst parts of quarantine. So I encourage anybody who really loves it just to keep at it. You never know. And also find as much inspiration as possible. Figure out your tax situation ASAP. If you've made more than $600 off art, figure out your tax situation. The IRS will come for you.